Is the short-term rental market dying? Are the Smoky Mountains oversaturated? These are the questions I hear from so many people that want to get into the short-term rental industry, but get really scared when they hear about all the alarmism and Airbnb bust media that always seems to go viral on TikTok and Instagram Reels. So what I wanted to do was bring in Avery Carl, who is the foremost expert on vacation rental markets in America, and ask her some pretty hard and honest questions about the short-term rental market. I can tell you right now that some of her answers will surprise you. So if you want an update on the health of the Airbnb industry in 2023 going into 2024, then you're going to want to stick around until the very end of today's episode of Raw Built. How do we start this? Is the short-term rental market crashing?
I don't think so. I mean, real estate, it's very market specific. So what's happening in one market's not it's not what's happening in other markets. I think there's definitely markets where it's not great owning a short-term rental right now, like Dallas, for example. But in other markets, like Luke just did and he's going to come by in a minute, just looked at our numbers today, and summer was a little bit rough, but overall, year over year across the 4 markets that we're in, we're actually up about $7,000 from last year.
Oh,
so
nice.
yeah,
Okay.
depending
Cool.
on which area, kind of depends on how you're doing, I think.
Great. Well, that's what we call a cold open. We just went right into it. But for people that don't know who you are, can you just give us a quick introduction? Some of your accolades. Give us a little tidbit about you, Avery.
All right. Accolades. It's what my 90-year-old grandmother says. The reason she cooks is she wants people to give her accolades because she's a good cook. Anyway, so my name's Avery Carl. I'm a real estate investor. I have 250 doors personally. I wrote the Bigger Pockets book on short-term rental investing, and I own the Short Term Shop, which is the country's largest short-term rental specific real estate team. We're at EXP. We actually just won the award for top team in the world at EXP.
Very cool. Well, congratulations. You built
you.
quite the empire with short-term rentals. You're speaking at HostCon, and so I
Yes.
thought,
Thank you for
well,
having
we
me.
should have you on the channel to actually, well, I would say promote HostCon, but we're sold out. So people who watch this will be like, dang it, too bad. But you're such an expert in the world of vacation rental markets. Your primary market that you've focused on for so many years, would that be Gatlinburg?
Yeah, so that was our first one. That's definitely kind of like our flagship. That's a really great market. I think a lot of people, Californians specifically, they want to call that one oversaturated specifically because they don't realize that it existed before 2019 when they all heard of it.
Yeah.
And
On
then
Bigger
it was.
Pockets?
Yeah.
When you came on?
Right. Well,
That's how I heard of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
See, but Gatlinburg is a market that has been all short-term rentals since the 60s. So it's not, and then we lost half of them in 2016 in a fire. So everybody's like oversaturated. It's like we just kind of got back to equilibrium. That's been like our main market for a while, but we got 20 now.
Yeah, you're starting to, there's this trend where when you hit the market, everyone finds out about you. You've recently started talking about Shenandoah, and I'm like, shh. What are you doing? Don't ruin Shenandoah for people.
We have an agent there, by the way.
That's a great market. So what are some of the other markets that you focus in? And then I want to start talking about what we're seeing in the markets respectively.
Okay, so we've got the Smokies in Tennessee, Blue Ridge, Georgia. We've got 4 markets in North Carolina. So 2 mountain markets, 2 beach markets, Outer Banks and Carolina Beach, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. We've got 4 markets in Florida. So the entire Panhandle plus the Bradenton, Sarasota area. Then, of course, Orlando here. Gulf Shores, Alabama, Broken Bow, Oklahoma. We got 2 markets in Texas, so the Galveston, Crystal Beach area, and the Hill Country. We've got Scottsdale, Arizona, Branson, Missouri. We got the Cascades in Washington, and Shenandoah.
Maybe a better question would have been, what markets aren't you in?
Yeah, we don't do metro market. We have some I call like vacation-ish metro markets, like Scottsdale and Orlando. We stay out of metro markets for the most part.
Is there a reason for that? What's the strategy there?
Typically, it's because they're the most susceptible to anti-short-term rental regulations. So we had an office in Nashville. A lot of people don't know that when we first opened, because that's where I lived at the time. But we just ran into so many things after like the 3rd client developer lawsuit where they would buy a short-term rental pre-construction that was zoned for short-term. And then 3 years later when it's finished, it was no longer zoned for short-term. We were like, you know what, we're not dealing with this anymore. We're not putting our clients through this. We're only focusing on markets where you don't really have to worry about that happening.
Yeah, very cool. So I sort of want to talk about some of the markets where I feel like people are crying uncle. And maybe you can kind of speak to some of the trends that we're seeing. So it feels like a lot of people in Blue Ridge and Crystal Beach are saying that numbers aren't penciling out these days. You have so many clients in these markets. What are people saying right now? Are you having clients that are still having a ton of success here too?
So the way that things are right now, you really do have to differentiate yourself in a market, both with management and with decor. So I think there's a lot of people who bought things in the last 2 years that they looked at people's numbers and said, okay, that looks great. I'm going to buy this, but I'm going to be able to do better than this. But they didn't change anything about the property. They haven't done anything to really improve the property itself or optimize their management. They just said, oh, well, they did this. I can do better than that. Let me just try this. And then it didn't pencil out that way. I think it's really the hosts who look at this as the business that it is. I think we had a lot of people in the past 2 years who really bought these things just because they were like, oh, cool, I can buy a beach house and the payment's only going to be X amount because the interest rate's super low. So let me just do that and I'll put it on Airbnb when I'm not using it. So I think a lot of those buyers are the ones that are kind of having the problems that really didn't look at it as the business that it is.
That's a really good point. That's sort of how I feel right now. It's like it was, I mean, I don't really like the term, but a gold rush there for a second where it was like you could buy a house, put a mattress in it, list it on Airbnb and make thousands of dollars. And now those people never reinvested back into their property. And so they're kind of losing out to the people that actually take this very seriously as a business. And so I feel like the headlines are always surrounding the mattress in a house places.
Right.
Whereas a lot of the vets in the industry seem to be doing okay.
Yeah, and I've stayed in 5 short-term rentals this year, and I kind of feel like we're in this bubble of people who really care about it. And so I had an unrealistic expectation of what most short-term rental hosts are, because most short-term rental hosts are not the people that follow you or the people that follow me or the people who are at this conference. I've stayed in several this year. Like, one of them did not disclose in the listing that she lived there and she moves out while you stay there.
Right.
And so all their stuff was everywhere. I'm like, oh my God.
Hair everywhere, that
yeah.
kind of thing.
So I realized that the vast majority of short-term rental owners are not the people who are coming to conferences to learn more and who, buy courses and follow people to try to learn. They're just the slap it up and see how it goes people. And that was kind of a weird realization, because I thought all of us were here, these type of people.
It was like kind of a short-term rental nerd, but not necessarily.
No, they're not.
Yeah. They hand it over to, very large property management companies, and they're like, send me the check.
Yeah.
I kind of felt that in Crystal Beach. I bought like a really good deal, like creative deal. I was like, man, I should make really good money on this. And honestly, I just wanted to break even.
Right.
Which is sort of the thing. But then I saw my neighbor was making like a ton of money, like more than me. And it was like the same exact house in different color, worse decor, and they were booked. And so I started like thinking about it. So the way I've been differentiating quite a bit is I added like a mini golf course. Stupidly, I did it in the middle of July. So I paused my calendar. I should have just waited a month.
Rob.
But the thing is, it's like, if I don't do something, there's this perfect infographic that's like a giant balloon and it says idea, and then there's like a needle and then it says inaction. And it's basically like, if you don't take action on it, you're gonna pop that balloon, right?
Yeah,
and you'll
true.
never actually do it. So for me, that's how it was. I was like, if I don't just like do this, I'll never do it.
I can see that.
And so could I have made $15,000 more? Yes, but I did it, right? And so it's done. Problem is I won't really see the effects of that until March or whatever. Yeah. Kind of the same thing with Smoky Mountains. I built that treehouse deck really in July, seeing some good bookings on there. And then another thing that I did is I installed a pickleball court in Scottsdale, Arizona, and that's had a huge uptick. In Scottsdale last November, that property grossed $13,700, lost money. About $7,000 because the expenses are 20. And I was like, well, that can't be right. And I was like, starting to look at my competition. So I added a pickleball court, spent $22,000 on it. And then this year, we're not even in November yet. What do you think the total gross bookings are? You might already know the answer to this. Okay, what would you say 1 year later with the installation of a pickleball court?
30?
Close. $39,000.
Wow, for one?
It's a triple pickleball court, so there's 3. But just that one amenity, $22,000 added $26,000 of revenue for 1 month.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's crazy.
That's what I'm talking about, because Scottsdale is another one where people have been like, oh, like with the Super Bowl last year, and there were all those articles about, well, this one property manager can't get anything booked, but when you go look at his stuff, it was like all garbage, but you differentiated yourself.
Well, and that's the thing is like, I knew that there's something about this property. I knew there are people in Scottsdale that are making like 30, 40, 50 a month. And I was like, there's just no way that this property is a dud. And I started looking at it and people are offering like putt-putt courses. They're offering like arcade games and hot tubs and heated pools. And so I was just like, well, not a lot of them are offering pickleball court. I had talked to a couple people and they're like, yeah, that had an uptick, and I did it. And here we go, like a 100% ROI a year later. So have you been at all proactive in upping the amenities of your listings, or have you seen any of your clients going back to the drawing board and actually like trying to maximize the revenue of their portfolio? Like what are the trends you're seeing there?
So I'm seeing a lot of pool additions, and that's like a really great way to also add value to a house. Is if you bought a house that doesn't have a pool. Like, pools don't add a lot of value in all markets, but like in Florida, they really do. So you're looking at like a $300,000 purchase price difference in Florida if you have a pool versus not, and then you can add a pool for $70,000. So you just saved yourself, $230,000 $8,000. So we're seeing a lot of pool additions, but a lot of people, it's really just resetting their expectations of, we've had a few people say, hey, I had a great September last September, but I'm not really doing well now. Can you look at it? And we're like, well, you have your prices like as high as they could possibly be. You're way higher than your comp. And they're like, well, that's what I had last year, but this isn't last year. So we're not asking you to drop it to the basement, just drop it to a reasonable price. And then they were booked the whole month.
So be okay with $5,000 versus $6,000.
Yeah,
exactly.
right? Exactly. Yeah. And I think people got this number in their head, this baseline of when it was really, really high, and they don't ever want. Yes, and they don't ever want to make less than that, which I get that. Like, I don't ever want to make less than I made last year either. But not every single year. You can only have one best year ever. So it's okay to have your second best year or your third. So I think people kind of had to just come to the realization it might be a little bit less, but we've had less bookings this year, but actually have made more money. So it's just a mindset shift, I think.
Super interesting. I interviewed Jamie Lane, the senior vice president of AirDNA, and that's the same thing he said. He said that occupancy went down, but actual ADR went up. So it counteracted the decrease in occupancy. So if people want to make more money in short-term rentals, what are some obvious amenities that they could add? Let's say in the Smoky Mountains and Shenandoah, some of these more woodsy, Blue Ridge, some of these woodsy areas. Like, what are people missing out on their listings that they don't have necessarily?
So Shenandoah is an interesting market because the competition in Shenandoah is not the same as what it is in like a Blue Ridge or a Smokies. So if you take the principles that you have learned from being a host in those types of markets and apply it to Shenandoah, like there's no pools in Shenandoah. There's very few hot tubs. A lot of things are not all the way updated yet. There's not a lot of great decor happening there. So if you take the principles from some of those more blue chip markets and apply them to more emerging markets like Shenandoah, you can really, really just blow everybody else out of the water because the competition doesn't demand that yet the same way it does in Blue Ridge or the Smokies.
Let's talk about 2023, 2024. People still want to get into the game. The amount of people that are looking to get into the game may be less, but there are still some of us that are like, well, this is I think it's the only way to get cash flow in real estate is Airbnb, my opinion, with the interest rates the way they are. Can you give us like 3 markets that you are pretty bullish on?
Yeah. So I'm very bullish on Branson, Missouri.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yes, and it's also
I should beep that out.
Yeah, our agent there is a total rock star. He owns a bunch of them. He used to work for Evolve, like telling people where to buy, and then he became an agent in Branson. That's a really great one. And I also really like the cheaper markets like Branson when we're in a high interest environment because
it doesn't hurt as bad.
Yeah,
right?
It doesn't hurt as bad. It's not as painful. So Branson's a great one. I also really like Shenandoah. Myrtle Beach is a good one too.
Interesting. Okay.
Myrtle Beach still really affordable to get into. Lots
Where's
of
that
condos
at? What state?
in South Carolina.
Okay, I was gonna say north. All right, cool.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
I don't dislike any markets. I mean, there's deals in any market, but you just have to be able to find them. But I like those right now because, like I said, the interest on those lower dollar amounts is a lot less painful.
You know what's really interesting about the Smoky Mountains is it feels like there is a little bit more of an open-minded approach from some of the sellers to do seller financing, sub-2 creative financing. Are you seeing that more popular? Like, is it being popularized more? Do you see more sellers willing to offer this, or is this anecdotal to me?
No, we see a few. It's not a lot. It's not like, oh my God, I'm going to go buy 100 sub-2 deals, but we are seeing people be more interested in doing that kind of thing because it's the people that, and I'm trying to word this without like sounding mean.
Yeah.
But the people who over leverage themselves to buy things, like the people who HELOC'd 3 or 4 properties to buy that one property to where when that one property, if it doesn't perform, then it starts to affect your entire portfolio.
Effect,
Those are the types of sellers that typically will be more apt to do that. We've done a few. I want to give like one word of caution though, because I think that, and we've seen it, this happened to one of our clients and we did not represent them on this deal. But they did a subject to deal just direct with a seller, and they were so excited that they'd found that like golden ticket to do a subject to that they bought a house $200,000 over the next closest comp. Like the identical house next door sold for $200,000 less just before they bought it. So if you're going to do that, like don't get so excited that you found the somebody who's willing to do the creative financing and forget about the rest of the deal making sense.
Sure. Yeah, so one of the interesting things with sub-2 seller finances, I'm actually okay with overpaying if they give me the terms that I want. I don't know about $200,000 though.
$200,000 on an $800,000 house. You know, it's not $200,000 on a $2 million.
That's 25% more.
Yeah. So that was a little much for my comfort.
And what happened in that scenario? Were they just like, yeah, I'll pay $200K more if I get 0% interest, or like what?
So I didn't find out about it until after it was all said and done. And they were like, hey, look at this deal that I did. And I'm like, oh, what did you pay for that? And then I'm like, oh God. I was like, are you okay with like how much, like the one next door sold for $650 and you paid $875? They said the market will catch up. And I'm like, At some point, I guess. I
Yeah,
guess.
eventually. I mean, that's the
It
thing.
could be 20 years.
If you're going to pay $200K, you better be ready to hold it for 30, right?
Yeah.
Is he still going to cash flow, or are they still going to cash flow on it?
It's a little hard to say. The cash flow didn't excite me, but maybe they had different criteria than I did. Maybe they bought it for a different reason than I would.
Maybe they'll make it up on the cost seg or on the taxes. But yeah, I mean, that's a really good lesson. Sub 2 is great. It's a beautiful tool, but you still have to use the tool correctly.
Right.
I know that you don't like the answer to this because maybe you don't have one, but are there any markets that you're like, probably not going to do that?
I don't like metro markets, and I haven't been quiet about that over the years. Like, there's a lot of people that come up to me and they're like, hey, you always say no metro markets, but I'm doing really good in Columbus, Ohio. I'm like, that is awesome. I'm really glad for you. I will never buy something in a metro market unless it's like a lifestyle asset. Like, if I'm going to buy something in New York City, I don't care if it's going to cash flow. I'm just going to buy it to have it and hope, that being able to rent for 30-day minimum puts a dent in that expense for me, because that's something that I want. But in terms of like actual just investing for investment purposes, probably never going to do that.
I think I've heard you have some pretty spicy takes on medium-term rentals. I think I heard you on the Pineda show, wealthy investor, wealthy way. You were like, no, I hate it. Yeah, what are your thoughts there?
So I don't hate it. I find that a lot of people are like, oh yeah, midterms, I'm going to do travel nurses. And I'm like, let's think about that a little bit harder, because I don't think that investing in an entire asset class based on one small sect of one industry is smart. Now, if there's other types of people you can rent to, like if there's like a lot of construction going on in an area and they're going to be bringing in crews for months at a time, it's a little bit different. Or the
but I think
insurance.
I do think that's the main. I think people started with the nurses, right, the travel nurses, but now I do think that the actual strategy is catering to corporate companies. It's corporate housing, basically.
Yeah,
right? Oil
yeah.
companies, construction companies, nursing companies, all that kind of stuff. So do you feel a little bit better if someone's walking into it with a diversified mindset of who they're going to be renting to?
Yes, I think if okay, here's my 3 to 5 demographics, and it's not just one, knock yourself out. There's a million ways to successfully invest in real estate, which is a cool thing about real estate investing. I'm probably not going to start a new strategy at this point. I'm tired. I'm getting elderly. I'm in my mid-30s now.
Get you old for this.
Yeah, but if that's what you're doing to get started, like, do whatever. There was a time that everybody said short-term was stupid. So
Yeah, and honestly, a lot of people are saying that now, and I'm like, genuinely, cash flow-wise, where else are you going to really make money in real estate? Like, I think you will make less in short-term right now because of interest rates, but I do genuinely believe that like a lot of long-term rentals are breaking even right now if you're buying them, unless you're doing like a really good burr. I mean, I'm not everybody, but a lot of people. Short-term rentals, I think, are really the only place you can still make $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 a month for a property. Do you agree or disagree, or do you want to fight to the death?
No, we don't need to fight to the death. But it just depends. Like, if you're going to do a big rehab, so we've bought a lot of apartment buildings in the past few years, but we know it's going to cash flow great once we get everything rehab, but it's going to take several years to get there. So I think you're right that short terms are like the easiest to do it the fastest, because you don't have to wait for a bunch of year-long or 2-year-long leases to expire for you to be able to go in and do those things and add the pickleball courts. You can do it after the next checkout. So I think it's always going to be an important part of any real estate investing portfolio. And we're just not in the early adoption phase anymore. 8 years ago, you could go in and there were 1,000 great deals just laying around waiting for us to buy them all. And now it's an established asset class. So now you have to look more for the opportunity to get a deal to be what you want it to be, rather than what it is right now.
Yeah, Brandon Turner and David Green always used to say you don't find good deals, you make good deals.
Right.
And I think the days of 100% cash on cash returns are over.
Right.
Unless you do some new construction and you do some cash out refis. But in 2023 going into 2024, with interest rates being 7 to 9%, what do you think an aspiring real estate investor should be going for from a cash-on-cash perspective?
Ooh, that's a difficult one.
I think our golden metric was 20% for a long time.
It was 20, and then there are things I'm okay with 15, but you want to be looking kind of for either not just a value add in terms of adding equity, but an income add. So do you have room to add a pickleball court? Maybe that's not going to add $100,000 in equity, but you just demonstrated how much that can do for your income to get you to that cash-on-cash return number that you need. The amenity adding and what can you do, like buying in a really great location, maybe something that has a view. You can't build a view, but you can fix up the inside of something that does have a view. So it's really, just back to basic real estate investing value add, but now it's income add, because you can add income without necessarily having to do a full kitchen rehab, etc.
Yeah, I think I'm okay with honestly, for me personally, where I'm at, I'm more okay with the break even after I've have the team handle it, because I think the bonus depreciation, the cost segs, make that one fly. Like that Scottsdale property. At first I was like, well, dang, I don't want to lose money consistently, and then we fixed it. But then on top of that, our cost deferment, like our tax deferment on that, $600K.
Oh, wow. That's a good
$600K.
one.
So it's basically cash flowing like $60K a month on that first year. All right, so I think we got a lot of good titles here. We got top 3 markets you need to invest in, why you should never invest in short-term rentals. And let's see, I'll ask you one good one. That way we can deliver on what the clickbait's going to be.
Okay.
Are the Smoky Mountains dead?
No, absolutely not. I think that, again, like I mentioned earlier, you're not, yes, there are X amount of thousand short-term rentals in the Smokies, but you're not competing with that many. If you're somebody that's going to be watching this, you're clearly somebody that's taking the time out of your day, that you care enough to go try to better your management and learn. And that's not what everybody's doing. I've got 3 that I bought back in 2017 or 2015 to 2017, and those made about $45,000 gross, about $45,000 a year, and they're still making $80,000 now. So it's $80,000 each. So by that logic of the Smokies being dead, these are not super properties. These are just regular old cabins. We've redone the inside. They look nice, cute, clean, comfortable, but nothing crazy.
Do you have a heart tub in those?
No.
Okay,
I always wanted one, but it never worked out that I got one. But they're still making double the amount of what they made when they were supposedly, thousands and thousands less short-term rentals. So I think the Smokies can definitely handle a lot of tourism, and that's why there's a lot of rentals there.
Right?
Yeah. So as long as you are consistently enemy methoding, checking out your competition to make sure that you are at or better than their level, you're going to be surprised just by being somebody who would go find this video to watch. You're going to be head and shoulders above most of the market.
Awesome. I agree. I think you must purchase and optimize, not purchase and list, right?
Yeah.
Like I think a lot of people miss the optimize, and I think you purchase, list, optimize, a year later, reinvest back into your property and re-optimize.
Yeah.
I keep telling people, it's like, why do you want to go and spend $100K on your next house when you actually might be able to make way more money on your property now? And that's why I'm investing back in all of them, because I'm like, if I can spend 50 grand and make an extra 15, as that 15K that I'll make in revenue goes straight to my bottom line in profit.
Yeah.
Every dollar I can increase is like another dollar in profit. That's not the case with new properties. I think for anybody at home listening to this, the idea is there is an art here. It's not just listing and rolling. You gotta make it like, one of a kind listing, which a lot of people in the Smokies, thanks to your direction and a lot of people that watch the channel, they've got really beautiful, sparkling listings. So
They do.
you got to stand out. Where can people learn more about you if they want to find you on Instagram, on social, on all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so we're the same on YouTube, Instagram. It's at The Short Term Shop, or you can find us on our website. If you want to work with one of our agents, you can go to theshorttermshop.com.
Awesome. Well, we will see you at HostCon.
Yes,
in
looking forward to it.
2 weeks. Thank
See
you
you
very
then.
much. Talk soon.